Hi folks, Mike Daku here. Thanks for joining us again. During our course, we've had an opportunity to discuss many topics, and I kind of want to follow up with several of them with Kathy, and thank you, Kathy, very much for being here today with me. And it's a pleasure to see you. And we're going to go ahead and, in our course, Intro to Addictive Processes, we've talked about, or will talk about, a variety of topics which include and are not limited to the process of addiction. I'm always interested in asking people, what is addiction? What's this animal that we're talking about? How do people see it? What the process is? What the continuum of addiction is? We've talked about in class the disease concept of addiction, whether or not, and again, the ongoing battle and struggle, whether addiction can be characterized as a disease or not, or addiction can be characterized as a disease. And a lot of those, and we've had an opportunity to talk to several people as part of our class, but I was particularly interested to talk to you and get a feel for your personal experiences on how you see addiction. One of the first questions, obviously, is, did you have a sense as you got involved in your drug use that you were becoming addicted, or at what point did you feel that you were getting out of control? Could you pinpoint any time in your experience?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to do this. It means a lot to me. For me, I started very early, and having parents that were absent either because of work or because of their own issues, it gave me a lot of freedom. And it also introduced me to things quickly. There was alcohol in the home, there was marijuana in the home. So those things kind of came on slowly. And being the youngest of three originally, it came on slowly. However, what really sticks out in my mind is the very first time I ever did cocaine when I was 15.
What was that experience like?
There was enough for a little bit for each of us. And I spent the rest of the night looking for more. After that first taste of cocaine specifically, I was off and running.
Did you just go, wow, this is it. This
is the one. However, there were things that led up to that, obviously. But for me, it was just, things moved very quickly.
Now, was there any alcohol or marijuana use previous to that? Or?
Yes,
okay.
There was.
Okay.
Both. Starting 10, 11, 12, and getting worse 13, 14, 15.
So in your case, one of the things that is talked about in this field oftentimes is the impact of age or the onset of use when you first use a chemical. And typically what we've always believed is the earlier a person is introduced to things like alcohol, if we're going to use alcohol as a gateway drug, or marijuana, things like that the earlier they're introduced to the drug, that sets the stage, and I don't want to say guarantees, but leads to a case where it's very likely that if they continue especially into adulthood, they're going to be full-fledged addicts at that point. Do you think that was the case with you?
I do think that was the case with me. Let me back up just a little bit. I was off and running, so to speak, with cocaine. But there was there is still a progression that took place to where it went from using, I was still able to work at that time. Even though I was 15, I was working a job. And it was a weekend warrior type thing. But it was always present, always a thought in my mind. And it eventually led to being on the streets, being in and out of jail, in and out of treatment, losing my kids, all of those things. So
even early on, though, you talked about the first use at 15. During the week, because we talked about the addictive cycle, and the preoccupation and ritual and so forth, was there an ongoing preoccupation even during the week?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you identify any point in time where that use went from, like you say, the weekend warrior to all of a sudden it started to bleed into the regular week?
Yes. Actually, there's one time that particularly stands out. It was dividends. I had to work the next day. The dividend came out. I obviously didn't make it to work the next day, and it just kept on progressing from there.
Now, in terms of some of the consequences that you experienced, they included going to jail. What was the experience of going to jail like for you the first time?
Well, the first time, I ended up, again, dividends.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up forging somebody else's dividend in order to support my habit.
Okay.
And I think I was 20 or 21 at the time,
Okay.
the first time that I went to jail. But before I went to jail, I chose to go to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very pro-rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I believe that even though it may take 6-7 times,
Mm-hmm.
such as in my case,
Yeah.
you can always get something out of it. My first experience with treatment, though, wasn't the best for me just because I met more people. When you have a group of
You had
people
those
who are
connections.
sick, yes.
Yeah.
So going to jail my first time was when I had been running all summer long, didn't show up for court like I was supposed to. After getting out of treatment, I still had to go to court. I didn't show up for court, and I just, ran until they caught me, basically. And I can't really tell you much of that first time. I was in, I think, for 45 days, and...
Do you remember at all making a connection? This may seem like a silly question, but the first time you went to jail, did you at all make the connection that, wow, this is where my drug use is leading me to? Did you make that direct cause and effect? I'm involved, I'm doing other risky behaviors, I'm forging things, I'm doing all these things. Did you make that direct connection, or was it just, stuff happens, that sort of thing?
I think there may have been a very small piece, but at that time I was still, I can just, this isn't going I can do this for a while. I can stop if I want to. I just don't want to right now. I was definitely in denial. And I just really didn't care at that time.
Did you at any time, in class we've talked about the cycle of addiction, preoccupation, ritual, a lot of ritualized behavior, the actual use of the drug, and then coming out of that, and I call it the, oh my God, I can't believe I ate the whole thing phenomena, where you just go, I'm never going to do that again, and but you do it again, you renew the cycle, and it's, call it despair, call it depression, call it whatever. Did you hit a point where you felt like you were between the rock and a hard place, where you can't live with drugs, you can't live without them? Yes. Did you hit that point?
Yes, I remember that feeling very, very clearly. And it's horrible. It's a
dark place.
It's a very dark place.
Yeah.
And it's... After I had my daughter was born cocaine positive. Yeah. And the state took her from me. And this is when you talk about that, I wanted so bad to be able to stop. I, again, went to treatment. I got her back. I stayed clean for like 3 weeks. And I put myself in a place where I knew I shouldn't have been. And it started all over again. It was like no matter how much I wanted to do right, I just wasn't there. I wasn't there yet.
Was the pull just an insatiable pull for you? Or, I mean, how would you describe that?
It's really hard to describe. It's even after, a lot of people don't quite understand how powerful addiction is. Yeah. For me, like I said, I had been in treatment for 3 months, not a real long period of time, but 3 months, and then 3 weeks of being a mom and all that, and there wasn't anything really. I had help, but it was still there. It is just, it's like back here, just constantly talking, and it's, for me, it's like an on and off switch. It's kind of like
description.
It's.
At any point did you say, and maybe early on during your first treatment or the first couple of treatments, at any point early on did you say to yourself, and this is the big 3-letter word now, right? It's not that bad yet. At least I haven't done this, or at least this hasn't happened. You know, kind of, you know, in treatment we talk about the can you top this of misery, right? I mean, at some point were you there?
Early on.
Early on?
Early on. In my late teens, in my early 20s. Yes.
Yeah.
And that was after going to jail the first time. It was after going to treatment a couple times.
Yeah.
I still had that feeling that, you know, well, at least I didn't do like my sister did. I mean, she did that. At least I haven't done this. Yes, I've done that.
What was, at least in your mind, if you can identify it, what was the bottom? We talk in this field a lot about hitting rock bottom. What was the bottom? For some folks, hitting rock bottom, right? And these are serious life-threatening issues. I've known a lot of folks, hitting rock bottom was a .44 revolver in their mouth. You know, hitting rock bottom was the noose is literally around their neck. Hitting rock bottom is, here comes the truck, I'm walking out in front of it. At what point did you hit rock bottom in your mind?
You know, I said I had lost, my daughter was born cocaine positive.
Right.
That wasn't my rock bottom. Losing her.
And she was taken by the state.
She was taken by the state,
right?
and you know that my kids weren't enough to get me clean. A lot of people say, "Well, how could you do this? You have kids." I used my entire pregnancy. I have a brother who was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder over drugs. That wasn't enough. It came the summer of 2003. I had started using again after I gotten my daughter back. And I was burglarizing people's homes, just blatantly, just openly, not caring, just running until I would fall down. I would sleep until I got up, and then I'd just do it all over again.
Did you feel at that point you were on autopilot?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just... Okay.
That's that on and off switch.
Yeah.
That's just, yes.
Yeah.
Anytime that, you know, I would think, and when you talk about the rituals, those are very, very key, because it just, you know, you get up, you start the hustle all over again.
Yeah. You were going to say you remembered a time.
There was a time that I had climbed into somebody's window, you know, looking to burglarize their home. And after I was done in their house, thankfully I hadn't found anything that I wanted. I went out the front door. They were coming in the front door, and he pulled a gun on me, and he was not the nicest person. There was a bunch of guns in the house. I really thought that he was going to kill me.
There's your life in the balance right there.
That was it, right there.
Yeah.
And it's really, a lot of people may not understand this, but by the time that I had been arrested, you know, after that, I knew in my head there was something that changed in me. I knew that I wasn't going to be doing this for the rest of my life, but I still wasn't able to stop myself. I continued what I was doing until somebody had to stop me, which in this case was the police.
The legal intervention.
The legal interventions.
That type of thing.
And that ride to the jail that day was the most relieving.
Yeah. Like the proverbial rock off it was over.
It was over.
Yeah. And then once you went to jail and you had a list of, I guess, burglary things you were dealing with, right? I mean, a long list.
Yeah.
At what point do you think you made the decision? Did you go to treatment in jail then?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I did.
Was it different that time versus other?
Yeah.
What was different about it?
It's simply said I was ready. I was ready. I was open. I was willing to lay it all out there and just to really, totally, honestly look at me.
Yeah.
And I was pregnant, and I found out I was pregnant when I went.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of folks realize, and it's something that bears mentioning or bears repeating, as far as the amount of courage, personal courage, that it takes to stand up to say, I am an addict, and I take responsibility for myself, and this is what I've done. You know, it's very, very difficult.
It is. A lot of people think that it's the easy way out. treatment versus jail, or and it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
You're
It's
forced
work.
to look at yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, in terms of where you are now, you are a successful person. What stops you now from that type of life?
Well, for now, it's
yeah.
continuing to do the things that work.
Right.
I think we as addicts, a lot of times think, okay, well, I'm doing good now. I can, maybe I can go talk to Joe.
Right.
No, I can't go talk to Joe.
Yeah.
I have no business talking to Joe.
Right.
It's continuing to look at myself honestly, knowing what my triggers are, where I'm not safe, and to have support people in my life that will confront me on those things. I have to have people who
listen to you, see you, wave the finger even, kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's continuing to do the things that work.
Are there any questions that you think that I should ask you that I haven't asked? Is there anything you think that's important for right now for folks to know about addiction in general, about the path, about the dangers?
For me, I don't think that my path is typical of a lot of people because I progressed very quickly, and it doesn't happen like that, a lot or all the time. I think it does happen, it progresses, but it's the way that it happens, people tend to overlook, just like you were saying, oh, it's not that bad. I got a DUI, well, he had no reason to pull me over.
Right.
All of those things. We tend to ignore red flags.
And no course, I mean, we can put addiction on a continuum, but it really is, to a degree, an individualized journey.
It is.
Process, because it is different for everybody.
It is.
Yeah.
And what works for one may not work for another. And I totally agree. It is very individualized.
Well, listen, Kathy, I want to thank you very, very much for sharing with us today, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again.